All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the day two afternoon session stream here on the Formula Maximal YouTube channel. I'm Chris Cato, joining you for the next couple of hours here over on YouTube to do some live coverage of the action in Bahrain. And currently, we do not have any cars out on track because just as we were about to go live about 5 or 10 minutes ago, we've got our first red flag of the afternoon session. And that red flag was courtesy of the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso in the car all day today, but the struggles do continue for Aston Martin because his car came to a stop. Looked like it was at the end of turn 4, and he just basically parked the car, had to leave it there. It seems like it's some sort of an issue with the gearbox, potentially maybe even something electrical as well. It doesn't look like it's an engine issue, but I was just hearing some of the comments on F1 TV that it looks like it is possibly some sort of a transmission issue. And yeah, that's not sure if Fernando Alonso's day is done as of yet, but certainly not the way they would have wanted to start this afternoon session, as we were about an hour into this afternoon session when this first red flag stoppage happened. So once we get an update on what was wrong with Fernando Alonso's car, we're going to get back to you on that. But basically, this afternoon session started with the four-time world champion Max Verstappen going quickest of this day, but also quickest in the entire preseason testing. He set the fastest time of a 1:33.4, so he's currently sitting P1. Of course, it's still early days, but he's continuing a pretty good run in the car. He's got 68 laps on the board for today so far. He's in the car all day today, and then they will split days between the two Red Bull drivers on Friday. Lando Norris close behind him in P2, actually 9/1000ths of a second behind Max Verstappen. Lando's got 72 laps done on the board. They were exchanging fastest laps this morning, actually, so it's been pretty consistent at the top between the two of them. And then line astern come the two Mercedes of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli in third and fourth. George Russell was 77 laps this morning. He got a lot of really good running done in this AM session, and it looks like Kimi Antonelli is looking to continue that until the end of today. So further down in the field, while we go through this delay, we got Nico Hulkenberg in the Audi, 15 laps in the afternoon. That time of a 1:34.6. He actually did that not too long ago. His teammate Gabriel Bortoleto was in the car earlier today, so another good lap there from Hulkenberg. Alex Albon in the Williams, 71 laps in the AM. He's P6. Gabriel Bortoleto, 7th. Oliver Behrman in the Haas, 69 laps this morning. 1.8 seconds off the pace, but nonetheless, Haas continuing their good run of form in terms of mileage and laps completed. Oscar Piastri in the second McLaren. He's driving this afternoon. He's got 12 laps so far completed in about an hour, and the best time of a 1:35.3. And then rounding out the top 10, Franco Colapinto in the Alpine with 62 laps this morning. So we should see a lot more drivers out on track this afternoon. And of course, we had some delays in the AM session with Lewis Hamilton, for example, only completing less than 10 laps because of some sort of a chassis issue. And one of the main things, of course, this AM session was the debut of really quite a radical design from Ferrari. And call it whatever you want, whether it's radical, it is certainly unique and one that we haven't seen so far from any of the teams actually on the grid. And I've actually just released a video, I think it was about a half an hour ago or so, that I uploaded my explanation and breakdown of what this Ferrari rear wing does. So while we watch or while we wait for that Aston Martin to be cleared off of the track, it looks like it will be a little bit of a lengthy delay. I'm going to play the video for you guys here, and then you can also check it out on my YouTube channel as well. And this will explain what is this new Ferrari rear wing, what it does, what are some of the advantages, and why Ferrari is going down this design route. It's really interesting, so let's take a look at it now. Ferrari continues to shock the grid with their innovative updates during week 2 of Bahrain testing. A day after debuting an aero element behind the exhaust aimed at improving downforce and lowering drag, Day 2 of testing saw all eyes on the rear wing of the SF26. The updated rear wing now sees the upper wing flap rotate around a central pivot point instead of the rear used previously. Once the flap reaches its horizontal open position, it continues rotating all the way around, a full 180 degrees. So basically, the front portion of the flap, with the HP logo, ends up pointing downward. The rear portion, with the IBM logo, ends up pointing upward. Because of this rotation, the trailing edge, when open, is effectively the leading edge when closed. This creates a different shape profile when the wing is deployed, which could influence how the airflow expands off the rear of the car. It's an extremely innovative way of opening the rear wing that no other team on the grid has shown so far. So what are the advantages of this for Ferrari? According to some telemetry data, Ferrari can gain 8 to 10 kilometers an hour more on the straights compared to the others, thanks to the new rear wing configuration. But not everyone sees the advantages of this little trick. Former F1 engineer Ruth Buscombe said on F1 TV that teams believe the trade-off is not worth it, as with this rear wing, you lose on acceleration. This is an extreme active aero solution that was evident by the fact that Lewis Hamilton was stuck in the pits almost all morning after only completing 5 laps. The team says it was a slight technical issue with the chassis, but not power unit related, and Ferrari had also removed the floor from the car, which is why the screens were up. Although Ferrari would prefer being on track, they were not panicked over the loss of running in the AM session. This rear wing configuration might be a solution to the diffuser Ferrari have been running during this week, which has gained them low-speed downforce, but at the cost of some drag. This rear wing update could help mitigate those losses the SF26 is experiencing, and if it does, it could be a genius solution that gives Ferrari an aerodynamic edge over their rivals this season. So there you have it, guys. That is the little short summary there of what that new Ferrari rear wing upgrade is all about, what it can do, and some of the advantages that could be used by Ferrari in the coming days and also into the first season as well. So there's a lot of discussion going on online as to whether this will be a permanent solution or whether this is something that Ferrari is trialing. But it did lead to some issues in the morning. I'm not exactly sure if it was 100% related to Hamilton's delay in the pit lane, but it was reported as some sort of a chassis issue and not engine related. So it could be something to do with the rear wing as well. And here we have on F1 Twitter as well, just some of the differences that you see at play here. So it's very interesting, the design and the uniqueness of these new regulations that we're seeing from the team. So that's a very good positive. And then here you see, of course, this is what happened with Fernando Alonso. Just 15 or so minutes. We're still under yellow flag conditions, no longer red flag, so we should be getting going here soon. But yeah, it's just some sort of an issue for sure. Let's see if we can have a listen, or although I'm not going to play it actually, just in case we don't get any copyright or anything like that. But it is Fernando Alonso. It looks like for the next little while, his session will be done. All right, yellow flag is over. Cars are heading out now toward the end of the pit lane, and we are about to get green flag conditions here. So, yeah, pretty fast cleanup, actually. A little bit slower than some of the other incidents that we've had so far in testing. But green light is out, pit lane is open, and cars are heading back out onto the circuit. So that delay has been over. Very good news for us as we can continue our coverage here on day 2 of the second week of F1 testing. And we've got a lot of cars now heading back out onto the circuit. So it's very good to see. And we're going to see if we can sort out that information from Aston Martin as to what the issue was. And once I figure out what the problem was, I'll try to get that information to you guys. And yeah, basically how some of this stream is going to work today is, of course, obviously I'm going to be sitting here standing by on the microphone, but I won't be doing commentary for the full 3 hours, of course. That might be just a little bit too difficult on my end, and I am possibly slightly starting to lose my voice. So I'll be jumping on periodically throughout this 3 hours on and off on the microphone. I've got 3 screens in front of me following the timing, following the data, and then, of course, the trackside updates as well as to what's going on. So, but I've also got the trackside FX sounds from the Bahrain International Circuit, as you can maybe hear a little bit now in the background. So I will be just letting that do the talking for most of this session as well. But I am keeping an eye out on the live chat, so if you guys are currently listening, and if you have any questions, and if you have any requests as well, if you want to see a particular driver's telemetry up on the screen, then let me know. I do have all of the driver's telemetry available, of course, only the ones who are currently out on the circuit, and so I will be able to post those on the big screen there as you see in front of you. So yep, just drop a chat there in the live chat and let me know if you want to see any driver in particular. Before I go, just for this little break here, just wanted to go through the driver lineup for today. So, important to point out that with Red Bull and Ferrari, only the 2 drivers, or excuse me, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Aston Martin, the only 3 teams who are running only 1 driver today. So, Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, and Max Verstappen will be the only 3 drivers today doing a full day in the car. So, they've got a lot of running ahead of them in the next couple of hours, and the rest of the teams are splitting between the 2 drivers. So that's an update there. And let's see if we can get any sort of word or information on what was the issue on Fernando Alonso's car. And as you can see here there in the images, his car was stopped there on the circuit. He didn't even have time to pull off into the escape road, so it must have been some sort of a serious issue in which he had to stop the car straight away. But after the stoppage, it's getting really busy now on the circuit. We've got 8 cars, now looks like 9 cars out on track with Max Verstappen just exiting the pit lane. So it's getting really busy now here in this 3rd hour of F1 testing here on this day 2. So we'll keep an eye out for the long runs. We'll keep an eye out on if we get any sort of performance runs in the next little bit, especially as conditions cool off in the next couple of hours or so as daylight falls in Bahrain. Lewis Hamilton actually currently on a long run, so I'm going to see if we can get to Lewis Hamilton's live telemetry at the moment. I would be very curious to follow along with his progress on the C1, so that's the hardest of the compounds that the teams have available to them this week. So we're going to put that up on the screen here and take a closer look at Hamilton's live telemetry. There it is. So Lewis currently going now through the tricky downhill braking left-hander there of turn 10 and heading into the final sector here. Really the only high-speed sections of the circuit in Bahrain, the turn 11, 12, and 13 complex. But of course, some of the drivers taking it a little bit slower in these generation of cars, of course, with the clipping and the battery issues and just overall the loss of downforce with these new cars. We don't have as much high-speed corner sections there as we did in the previous years. So interesting to just keep our eyes glued on Hamilton's progress here on this long run. And he's done so far 1 lap on this hard tire, if this data is correct. And overall on the day, Lewis Hamilton 34 laps and 14th place, a best time of a 138.2. As just as we say that, Kimi Antonelli pops up into P3 with the 133.8. He's 4/10 off of Max Verstappen's fastest time so far, and Antonelli just completed his 22nd lap of the day. So we will be going on board with Kimi Antonelli as well, and other drivers like Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, who are out on track at the moment. So I'm going to be off the mic for the next couple of minutes or so, let the cars do the talking, and I'll be back with more updates as soon as I get them. Just to pop in here, guys, quickly, Max Verstappen just set the fastest time, not only of today, but also of testing, a 1:33.1. So he improved by about almost 3/10 on his older fastest lap. So Verstappen so far fastest in this test, and that was done on what looks like the medium tires. 71 laps on the board for Verstappen. All right, guys, just to jump quickly here back on the mic. Thanks everybody who's been tuning in so far. We're about a little bit over a half an hour or so live on YouTube on this stream. We just saw on the F1 TV feed not too long ago, Fernando Alonso's AMR 26 has made it. Fernando Alonso's AMR 26 has made it back to the pit lane, so we are seeing Fernando's car actually is back in the Aston Martin garage, so he will be able to continue. Hopefully later on in this afternoon, they're going to get to take a look at that car and do a complete once-over on what the issue was. He stopped out on track about 30 minutes ago or so with some sort of an issue. Commentators on F1 TV saying it possibly was a transmission problem, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. Once I get some sort of confirmation, I will post it on the bottom right corner under the live updates panel. But just a quick update, I wanted to get on the mic just to point out that Sergio Perez of Cadillac is finally back out on circuit. Cadillac, once again, having quite a bit of struggles so far in today's testing. They've had some smaller issues almost on every single day of testing so far. It was yesterday and to start today as well. Perez has only got 7 laps completed so far in almost about 90 minutes or so in this afternoon session. Valtteri Bottas, he recovered actually pretty well in that morning session. He managed to complete 58 laps for P16 as well. We're not focusing so much on the pace of Cadillac, but we do expect them to be further down there. So a little bit quieter now out on track with less than 2.5 hours to go. Only Antonelli and Perez currently lapping at the moment. Kimi Antonelli actually currently on a long run on the medium tire. He's done 32 laps so far, and of the 4th fastest time of a 1:33.8. He's 7/10 behind Max Verstappen. Verstappen just set the fastest time of F1 testing so far with a 33.1 about 20 minutes ago, and then he returned to the pit lane as well. He's got 78 laps on the board, and he's been running mostly the medium tire, and he's done 2 stints on that prototype tire as well. But he did 13 laps on his previous stint on that medium tire. So expect Verstappen to be coming out for a longer run a little bit later on, as well as all the teams essentially, and particularly the big 4 teams of McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes. And it should be getting into the twilight hour now in Bahrain. So in the next half an hour to 1 hour, once the sun starts to go down and we start to get the floodlights on, we're going to see a lot more of the longer runs and race simulations, because those are the best times to simulate a race. Of course, the Bahrain Grand Prix is a night race, so we're going to see a lot more action from these teams and what their pace is like. So stay tuned here on the live stream. Again, if you're watching, say hello in the chat, and let me know if you got any questions, you got any requests for telemetry, just drop it in the chat. I will be here on the mic through the next 2.5 hours covering the action with you. So there you go, guys. You just probably saw it there. Oscar Piastri has just jumped up into P1 on the timing sheets, the fastest time of today and of testing so far with a 132.8. So Piastri fastest so far here on this day 2 F1 testing session. It was a fresh set of medium tires there for Piastri, only 3 laps done on that set. So a little bit of pace there from the McLaren as the sun starts to go down. Track temperatures cool a little bit, and of course the grip starts to ramp up. And just speaking about that track temperature, it's dropping now fairly consistently, 33 degrees Celsius. Air temperature still pretty hot at 28 degrees, but if we compare that to the track temps from earlier this morning, that was around 43 degrees Celsius. So quite the difference in between track temperatures, which of course is to be expected as night falls. So we got a new leader up at the top of the board, Oscar Piastri for McLaren, a 132.8. Currently 3 cars out on track at the moment. We are going to join Sergio Perez's on-board telemetry in just a couple of minutes' time here, just to get a look at what that Cadillac is doing and what type of speeds as well they are reaching on the straight. We're also going to do a update at the top of the hour, so with 2 hours to go, that will be 3 p.m. here local time in Europe. We're going to do a full rundown of all the times, the speed trap numbers, and the data as well. So stick around, guys. I will be back on the mic in about 15 minutes or so. So, ladies and gentlemen, Chris here back on the mic, coming up to 2 hours remaining in this session here on day 2. And things are about to really get busy here out on track, and the action is going to start to pick up as more teams head out on the circuit for some long runs and also to maybe do some faster paced runs as well on those medium tires. But we're going to do a quick little update for the next 10 minutes or so. So far about the best times, the speed trap numbers, the data, and of course who's looking good and who's not so far. So the developments in the last 20 minutes or so was Oscar Piastri actually of McLaren set the fastest time so far of F1 testing, a 1:32.8. He's 0.3 clear of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, followed by Lando Norris, Kimi Antonelli, and Nico Hülkenberg in the Audi, rounding out the top 5. Nico Hülkenberg set that time of 1:33.9 on the medium tire as well. A little bit of a glory run, certainly from Audi, who probably put a little bit less fuel in the car and sent him out there. But nonetheless, a solid time for him. He's got 25 laps on the board, and he's currently out on track at the moment. Then rounding out the top 10, George Russell in 6th with 77 laps in the AM session. He had a very good run in the Mercedes. Alex Albon in the Williams 7th. He completed 80 laps in the morning session, a very impressive run of form from him. 80 laps actually still. He's out on track. Gabriel Bortoleto in the Audi in P8, 29 laps completed this morning. Oliver Behrman 9th, and rounding at the top 10, Franco Colapinto, who's done also 88 laps on his own today. He's the sole Alpine driver for this session. And then further down the order, we got Lewis Hamilton in 12th. He's also the sole Ferrari driver for today. Only 43 laps for Lewis so far. He had some sort of a chassis issue in the AM session, which prevented him from getting a lot of running done. He only had right around less than 10 laps completed in that AM session. Of course, the big news in the morning was that new rear wing that Ferrari debuted, the one that rotates 180 degrees completely when the active aero is enabled. So it's very interesting there. We touched on it a little bit, and maybe I will be playing that video once again. I put a brand new video out on my channel just about an hour ago explaining that whole Ferrari upgrade, what it does, why it's on the car, and what are some of the advantages and disadvantages. So you can check that out on the channel, but I'm probably going to be showing it here as well in the next couple of hours. Elsewhere on the grid, Cadillac off to a little bit of a rough start in the AM session. It took them quite a while to get out onto the circuit, but eventually Valtteri Bottas did get there. 58 laps done in the morning for him, and then his teammate Sergio Perez, who's not on track at the moment, but has been lapping consistently in this PM session so far, and he's got 20 laps on the board. So still some time to make up there for Sergio Perez. The only red flag that we've had so far in this PM session is courtesy of Fernando Alonso, and you'll see him there on your timing screens down in 13th. He's only done 68 laps so far today, which is not too bad, but he probably wanted to get those numbers up a little bit higher. But he did stop the car at the exit of turn 4. It sounds like it's some sort of a transmission issue with the gearbox, and so Alonso's car has been recovered. It is back in the hands of Aston Martin in the pit lane, but we're still not sure whether he's going to be able to get back out onto the circuit or yet, with 1 hour and 57 minutes to go in this session. So we'll keep an eye out on that. Now, it's one of the interesting things we could talk about here is just some of those speed trap numbers. I mentioned earlier about how Nico Hülkenberg's time of a 1:33.9, which is good enough for 5th place at the moment, was probably a little bit of a glory run by Audi, taking out the fuel. But also you can see from the speed trap numbers, I'm going to read them out to you here, is that it probably has a little bit to do with the fact that they turned up the wick a little bit on the engine, or from the deployment mode in the battery, because Hülkenberg and Bortoleto currently P1 and 2 in the speed trap with 341 and 337 kilometers an hour respectively. McLaren's Oscar Piastri in P3 with 333 kilometers an hour. So his fastest time there may be helped just by a little bit of that straight line speed. And once again, we're seeing the Red Bull Ford powertrains, Max Verstappen all the way down in 9th in the speed traps, only 321 kilometers an hour, and then Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls 320 kilometers an hour right behind him with the 10th fastest speed trap time. So it looks like the Red Bull Ford powertrains, they're hiding just a little bit in terms of their straight line speed. They've been reported to have some very good straight line speed so far in testing and in this season, but it looks like they've just turned it down slightly a little bit for these sessions here in Bahrain. So that's an interesting thing to keep an eye out for if they're going to turn it up just a little bit for performance in the next couple of hours or tomorrow on the final day. Currently going out on track, we have 5 cars out on the circuit, and Max Verstappen is currently on a run on the C3 tire, and we've got his live telemetry, which we're going to join a little bit later on. Max is currently on a longer run. You could tell 2 seconds off in that first sector from Piastri's best time, so Max has settled in to a longer run here. We're getting to the point of the best conditions now for a race simulation. Of course, the sun is setting pretty rapidly in Bahrain. The floodlights are turning on slowly, and we're going to get the best time for race simulations as to what the real Bahrain Grand Prix is going to be like in a couple of months' time. Track temperature falling again. It's 31 degrees Celsius currently at the moment. About 25 minutes ago it was around at 33. So we're seeing quite a significant drop in the track temperatures, which is good. It provides good conditions, better grip for the drivers, and they should be able to get some more performance out of the tires if they so wish to do more of a qualifying sim. But we're probably not going to see too many of those. And we see Verstappen coming through now here at the back end of his lap, and about 5 seconds off the pace of Piastri. So yeah, he's definitely settled into a long run on that C3 tire. And if we just take a look, yeah, that's a pretty brand new set of that medium tire as well. Only 2 laps done on that so far. So expect to see a lot of the big hitters now coming out and doing the long runs. And just as we're speaking about that, we're going to join Max Verstappen and his onboard telemetry, so we can follow along with what he's doing, the speeds that he's doing, and what gears he's taking as well, which is pretty interesting to follow with these new cars and the new regulation set. So we've got all the driver telemetry available at our fingertips here. And yeah, if you have any request as to which driver's telemetry you want to see, if you want to see currently out on track, we got Verstappen, Hülkenberg, Antonelli, and Lawson. If you want to see any of those drivers, just drop it in the chat, And if not, just say hello from where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know where our viewers are watching from around the world. And yeah, I think that about, for the most part, does it on that little update so far, as we've got less than 2 hours to go in this session. Bottom right-hand corner, you see the live updates panel. You see the driver lineup for today. And of course, I will be posting some social media updates as well in the next little bit. In the next 5 to 10 minutes or so, I'm going to be going off on my lunch break. I've been full throttle here at the Formula Maximale channel ever since 8 a.m. this morning. I've got a new video already posted up on the channel if you guys haven't seen that yet, so check it out. But I'm going to be here with you guys for the next couple of hours as we wrap up this day 2 session. So I will be jumping on and off on the mic, but I will let the F1 cars on track do the talking. So yeah, I'll be back a little bit soon after my little lunch break. So yeah, enjoy guys, and I'll be back.
carta de lá.